Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about a brand new album that I've only just got around listening to, and that is Veil of Maya, if that's how you pronounce it, because I'm so new to this band, and their brand new album Mother or Other. I'm not too sure, there's a bracket with an M around it, so let's just say, I'm just going to say Mother for the time being. As I've said, I've never really heard of this band before, at least with the last video I did on an album review with the Amity Affliction. I'd heard a couple of singles previously. With this one, I am going in completely like not knowing what to expect. I've seen a lot of talk about this band and this album especially, basically saying how it's supposed to be possibly one of the albums of the year. Now, when I first got into the song and we were listening to the first one, which was, oh God, that scared the absolute head out of me. We were listening to Tokyo Chainsaw, and it didn't really give me a massive like, oh my God, this is gonna be a mind-blowing album. It kind of took me a couple of listens to really get into. The whole stuttering, buffering effect made me think that like my phone was playing up, like it kept cutting out, cutting in. I didn't really quite understand it. Following into then Artificial Dose, it kind of like was the second song, and I was like, I'm not really feeling this album at all. It's not really standing out to me too much, very genty. But then after that, I started like understanding what kind of album I'm listening to, what kind of band I'm listening to, and I understood it from then on. One of my favorites which came out was Reconnect, or Connect, however you want to argue it was called. I felt it was quite experimental. They were kind of like trying a lot of different stuff. At this point, we started getting like a cleaner sounding choruses coming in. From then on, I was like, okay, so you're not just constantly like screaming, you have got some cleans to your songs. I think the beginning of the album, for me, it didn't really kind of like get me comfortable. It didn't really get me excited for the rest of it. But giving it a chance, listening to it, I started coming into like my element, and the album started coming into its own element, and I started to understand it a little bit more. After Reconnect, we had Red Fur. Now this is one of the singles that I have 100% listened to, and in fact it was probably the song that made me think, oh, maybe I should give like this album a go, because I actually do really like it. I know at the beginning I said I didn't know any songs by them, but at that point of listening to that song, I had no idea who they are. If anything, it was a coincidence that, you know, I looked at it for like the first time and thought, oh, I'm actually planning on doing an album review, and this song's on the album, so that's a good start, I suppose. So I liked Red Fur. I think it's definitely the best song, or it stands out as the song on the album, hence why it was probably a single, get people involved. Once I've kind of like got into that, and obviously I understand it, Disco Kill Party, can I just point out, if I say anything else about this album, the creative names for each song, I have to give like a 10 out of 10 for 100%. But yeah, I started getting into the kind of like synthy elements, I started getting into like the glitch kind of like effects, the metalcore, the genty stuff. I started getting into it, and from then on out, I knew, well, this is what this album is. This is what I'm gonna want to listen to it for. It's still an album for me that I will probably maybe listen to a couple of singles from time to time. It's not one which I think is solely focused for me, which is really weird saying that, because obviously I kind of like pride myself on quite a lot of metalcore and that, but for me it's not my type. Comparing it to the Amity Affliction album, Not Without My Ghosts, that is more centered towards me, so that is something that I prefer, what they kind of do there. Both heavy albums, maybe this is seen as a heavier than Amity Affliction, but in a different kind of style. My style's a little bit more melodic, and this album doesn't kind of have that much melody to it. Yes, the choruses come in and they're quite clean, they're quite catchy, they're quite soft, I like that, and then obviously it balances out with like the heavy side of things. But yeah, I wanted to give it a go, I wanted to give it a listen, just to kind of see if I'm missing out on anything in particular. For me personally, I'm not. I have listened to the album quite a lot in the last week. I've been literally grinding it out, listening to it, trying to get whatever I can. I think I'm just basing it on, it's a good album, it's a solid album, but I don't think it's for me. There's a couple of songs on it I quite like and quite enjoy, but it's not an album that I'm going to kind of like go back to. It might be an album that I might kind of skip through a couple of songs and get to like the songs like Red Fur or like Reconnect and go from there. I'm only being honest, that's just how I feel. Like, this is obviously like a personal like review. I'm not saying it's shit, I'm not saying it's awful. It's just, it sounds good, but it doesn't really stand out to me. When I hear that people are saying it's that album of the year, I don't really see it. I think there's other albums that have been out which are more for me and my taste. I don't want to sound like I'm being negative, and I don't want to sound like I hate the album, because that's not fair. That's not what I'm saying. I just think, as a personal opinion for me, I think there's been other albums that have been better. There's other albums that cater towards me more. Maybe that is why I've not really heard of this band previously, because it's not something that's caught me so well. I've just heard a lot of talk about this album, and a lot of people saying that it is really good. I've given it a go, I've given it a listen, I've made up my own opinion on it, which, you know, it's taken me a couple of tries to get into it. I understand it. I enjoy it to an extent. It's just a very kind of middle of the road kind of album. I'm sorry. Very odd video to make today, I get that. But you know, if I want to expand like my genres and expand my music knowledge and what I like and what I don't like, I've got to give these types of album a go. Let me know what you thought about the album. Let me know if you think maybe it wasn't the best album out there. Have they made better albums in the past that you think I might enjoy more? I don't want to leave like on a negative because, as I said, there are some songs on there I really like, but as an album as a whole, it's just not really my cup of tea. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new here and you kind of like the idea of these album reviews I'm doing, not so serious. I'm not making out that I'm this massive critic. I don't make my own music, so who am I to like shit on anyone else doing something? But it's just like a conversation, just like a talking point. If you want, like, comment, subscribe, dislike if you want. I'm sure I'll get a couple of those. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video real soon. See you later. Goodbye. Oh God, that scared the absolute hell out of me.